Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Loretta Besson, and I am a retirement plan specialist here at Goulden and McCarthy. I would like to welcome you to our Financial Wellness Program series of webinars. We have a terrific topic today, which will focus on 7 things you need to do in the decade before you retire. As we go through our working years, each stage truly gives us an opportunity to focus on different goals and create habits that will bring us closer on our journey toward retirement readiness. And as we reach the home stretch, we certainly want to make sure we can help you feel better prepared as you sprint towards retirement. We partner with leaders in the industry, and this presentation, put together by Franklin Templeton, has been very well received. As a reminder, our team at Goulden and McCarthy is available to help answer any questions you may have regarding this presentation or your financial plan more broadly. I will provide our contact information again following the presentation. And with that, let's get started. So by way of agenda, here are the 7 things we will discuss today to help you prepare. Number 1, determine when the time is right. 2, take aim at your retirement target. 3, maximizing your nest egg. 4, getting a portfolio checkup. 5, creating your Social Security strategy. 6, building a retirement income stream. And number 7, which is really my favorite, is looking beyond the money. So let's get started with number 1. One of the first things you need to do when preparing for retirement is really determining when the time is right. And to do this, let's take a look back at the history of retirement. So this is Otto von Bismarck. He was the Chancellor of Germany in the late 1800s and is often credited with creating the concept of retirement. Otto implemented what was called the Old Age and Disability Insurance Law. This law provided a state pension for anyone who reached the age 70. But not many people actually took advantage of that program. And you can imagine why, because at that time, the average life expectancy was only 43 and a half years old. Here in the United States, Social Security was introduced in 1935 and defined 65 as normal retirement age. Despite the passage of over 80 years since then, the age of retirement has really remained largely unchanged. At the same time, life expectancy has really been on the rise. As of 2019, life expectancy reached about 79 years of age. Early on, someone would have been lucky to reach a retirement age. Today, people can easily spend 20 years or more living in retirement, which is what we need to plan for when we are thinking about our time horizon. So that bears the question, at what age do you think you'll retire? This critical question is really not that easy for all of us to answer. When Morningstar asked people in their 40s and 50s to estimate when they'd retire, they noticed some surprising results. For example, if someone thought they'd retire at age 55, the research showed that on average, they were actually most likely to retire at age 58. And this may be because of things like the cost of healthcare, since Medicare doesn't start until age 65. Perhaps their nest egg wasn't big enough and they didn't feel ready at that time, or maybe they had unexpected or higher expenses than they anticipated. For someone who thought they'd retire at age 65, the research actually showed that they were most likely to retire at age 63. And that actually may be due to things like poor health for either them or a loved one, perhaps unemployment, or on the positive side, perhaps they even met their retirement goal early. In all research, actually, the common factor was age 61, and the adjustment is roughly half a year for every year above or below age 61. Anyone who thought they'd retire younger was actually drawn up towards 61, and those who planned to work longer were pulled back to age 61, which I thought was actually fairly interesting. It's good to know that we might not retire exactly when we planned, but when do people actually retire? This chart shows that a large group of people actually retire between the ages of 61 and 65. So ultimately, as you determine the right time to retire, it's best to think of this as a guidepost and not an absolute number for you. You may have to make adjustments as you're confronted with things in your life. One important factor to consider when it comes to actually deciding when you'll retire is whether you'll need to plan for a couple. As an example, let's look at a couple who married a few decades ago. In 1979, the average age men first got married was 24, and for women it was 22, an age gap of 2 years. What's interesting is that while the marriage age has increased, the average age gap has remained fairly consistent at about 2 years. Now let's fast forward to the day the husband is ready to retire at age 65. If his spouse is not covered by a workplace medical plan and is younger than 65, she won't be eligible for Medicare and will need to pay out of pocket for healthcare insurance. Now let's move ahead to that point in time when he reaches age 83, which actually today is the average life expectancy for a 65-year-old man. That's in 2020. At this point, if he passes away, his spouse will be living on her own. And because women tend to live longer on average, and she was younger when they married, the wife is likely to spend 5 years or more of her on her own in retirement. And keep in mind, these are just averages. For some, the gaps are going to be wider. So as a couple, when you're thinking about retirement, life expectancy and age differences are certainly going to be an important factor. Now, over the coming decade, you need to prepare for many important age-related milestones. And as you can see, starting from the catch-up contribution that begins at age 50 to taking required minimum distributions, which has now been pushed out to age 72, there's a lot of things that you need to consider along that way. So let's discuss some of those important milestones as we go through this process. So looking at your retirement target, let's look at one of the biggest questions people have when deciding if they're ready to retire. And that's really going to be, how much am I going to need? And this is something we always discuss in our meetings with our participants. And this is one of the rules of thumb that you should keep in mind. The first rule of thumb is that you'll need to save enough to generate 70 to 90% of your pre-retirement income in retirement. Now, you might think why you might need less in retirement. There are certain costs that are likely to go down once you retire. Perhaps you'll finish paying off your mortgage, or you'll spend less commuting or dry cleaning your work clothes. Many people spend less on food because now they have time to actually stay home and prepare those meals. But these reductions are actually going to be countered by other costs that go up in retirement. Many retirees are no longer covered by a workplace medical plan, and even with Medicare, premiums and copays could rise as you age and perhaps need more health care. Hopefully you'll spend more on travel, which is something that a lot of retirees enjoy doing. Or if you spend more time at home, your utility usage will probably increase, not to mention continuing to maintain your home. Now, these costs that can go up and down may offset each other, but there are two things that likely reduce your paycheck while you're working that actually do go away when you retire. And first, you won't need to pay Social Security or Medicare payroll taxes any longer. And second, you'll no longer be saving for retirement. So these are some of the reasons why people may require less income in retirement. The second rule of thumb is that you should save multiples of your salary by age. And let me show you what that means. As you get older, you should have a higher multiple of your salary saved for retirement. For example, if you are making $100,000 at age 55, you should have retirement savings 6 to 8 times that number, or roughly between $600,000 and $800,000 at retirement. So think about where you fall on this chart and think about how much you currently earn and have saved for retirement. This will be a good gauge to see if you are on track to meet your goals for the future. The third rule of thumb is that you need enough retirement savings to generate a desired income using a 4% withdrawal rate. And let's dig into what that actually means. So here are several desired annual income amounts that once retired you might want to generate on an annual basis. Now let's assume when you're retired you have your savings invested in something conservative that returns 1.5% a year. To provide you with your desired annual income amounts for 20 years, keep in mind that's the time horizon that we're looking at, including yearly increases for inflation, you'd need to have a minimum of these amounts listed here at the time you retire. Now let's say instead of a 1.5% return, you were able to invest your savings and generate a 5% return. Now you'll notice that the minimum amount that you would need to have saved when you start retirement is lower. In this example, the higher returns means that the total savings you need at retirement can be lower. However, it's important to understand investment returns are not guaranteed and you generally need to take on more risk to get a higher return. These rules of thumb are meant to give you really a general idea of how much you may need to have saved at retirement, and these may be practices you have in place already, thinking about replacing 70 to 90% of your pre-retirement income and also having those multiples of your salary saved. While these numbers certainly seem large, they don't have to be out of reach. For those of us that have been saving, have that time that we have been able to have our savings work in our benefit with compound interest, hopefully we are getting closer to meeting those goals. So how do we maximize our nest egg? The government offers multiple tax advantage options for you to help you increase your retirement savings. And again, some of you may have these in practice already today, but let's go through the options here. So let's take a hypothetical couple as we look at maximizing our nest egg. Imagine the husband is 52 years old and has an annual income of $150,000. The wife is age 50 and she is a stay-at-home mom. Now, when it comes to saving for retirement, one of the most common ways to do so is through your workplace savings plan, through the 401k. As a reminder, these are the 2020 maximum annual contribution limits for various plan types. So you'll see the 401k at $19,500. If you are participating in a simple 401k or a simple IRA, $13,500, and then a SEP IRA with a limit of $57,000. So now if you participate in an employer plan that offers a match, we're just using an example here of a common company match formula, 50 cents on the dollar, up to 6% of your salary. That would mean an additional $4,500 of contributions into the plan for this couple. And now as you get older, if you participate in a plan and are age 50 or older, you also have the ability to contribute what's called a catch-up contribution. That allows you to contribute an additional $6,500 as a catch-up contribution, and that's for the 2020 plan year. And you can also see the catch-up contribution that is available for the simple 401k or a simple IRA at $3,000. So we're showing our catch-up contribution there at an additional $6,500. Now, in addition to that, some of us, you may assume that if you participate in a workplace plan, you're not eligible to save in any other tax advantage IRA account, and that may not always be the case. If your income falls within the ranges you see listed here, you can also participate in either a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. So for example, since our couple is married and has income less than $206,000, they have the ability to contribute an additional $6,000 to a Roth IRA. In addition to that, because he's over age 50, an additional $1,000 more can be saved as a catch-up contribution. Now keep in mind, anyone can contribute to a traditional IRA. You just may lose the tax deduction if your income exceeds the amounts that are listed there on the table. So just keep that in mind. Another option to save is through a spousal IRA. So even if one spouse does not have earned income, the working spouse can contribute to an IRA on their behalf. A spousal IRA also has income limits, but as you can see, because our couple makes less than $206,000, they can add an additional $6,000 to a Roth spousal IRA. And because the non-working spouse is also age 50, they have the ability to participate in the $1,000 catch-up contribution as well. Now, if our couple were to take advantage of every opportunity we've covered, they would have the ability to save $44,500 per year in tax advantage retirement accounts. Now, saving that much for 15 years and earning a 6% return over that period would actually add over $1 million to their retirement nest egg. Certainly powerful. Now this only represents what can be saved in tax advantage retirement accounts. You also have the ability to save outside of that in regular accounts as well. Every individual couple has unique circumstances and may not be able to use all those opportunities mentioned. We just wanted to provide you the groundwork for some opportunities to save outside of the 401k. Now, as you get closer to retirement and even as you're moving along your journey, it's certainly a good opportunity to take your portfolio in for a checkup. As you can imagine, today's workforce is more mobile than ever. In a report done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this is back in 2017, they found that workers born between 1957 and 1964 actually switched jobs on an average of 12 times by age 50. And today, the most common way people actually save for retirement is through a workplace plan like a 401k. This report also included that 71% of jobs have a 401k or a similar plan. 60% of those plans actually also have an automatic enrollment feature. So these factors all combined, essentially, there are so many retirement accounts out there for employees. Sometimes they get forgotten or abandoned, and sometimes people leave them behind at previous employers. So it's a good opportunity to think about consolidating your retirement accounts if you have accounts at previous employers that you have not rolled over. Now, if you're thinking about doing that, one of the challenges that you may have if you have multiple accounts is that it's tough to get a clear picture of your overall asset allocation. So for example, if your retirement account at your current employer looks like this, where you have a 60% allocation to stocks and a 40% allocation to bonds, that might be a good mix in your current portfolio. But now take a look at your previous plans. If you haven't looked at your previous jobs, how those plans are allocated, you may find that you're actually more heavily weighted towards stocks. If you had those plans in place when you were younger, and if you have not revisited the asset allocation, and you look at your overall asset allocation, you may have a higher allocation to stocks than you originally anticipated. So again, it's always a good opportunity to revisit your asset allocation. And if you have not had the opportunity yet to consolidate your retirement accounts, it might be a good exercise to go through. So now let's assume you're 3 years from your retirement target date. You have $900,000 saved with a goal to reach $1 million. You've done well with your portfolio. You've decided to continue to contribute at your rate of $10,000 per year, which equates to about $830 per month for the last 3 years of work. Now, if you assume you will earn an average 8% annual return for stocks, it appears that you'll actually meet and exceed your goal, which at that time you might even start to think you'll get to retire early. But now what if this just happens to be the year 2000? If you think back to that time, the tech bubble burst and the stock market plummeted. So instead of growing your retirement, your portfolio actually tumbles, which leaves you with more than $400,000 short of your actual retirement goal. Obviously, when you're younger, volatility matters less because you and your portfolio have that time to recover. However, when you're only a few short years from retirement, a sharp drop in your portfolio can have a severe impact on your plan. Now, what if you had half of your portfolio invested in bonds? And we can see here that 50-50 allocation to stocks and bonds. If your account drops some, you would have ended that 3-year period. You may have ended that 3-year period in a much more manageable place. Now, if you kept working, it would have taken only 12 additional months to reach your original retirement goal if you had that 50-50 stock to bond allocation. If you kept that stock portfolio, it would have taken nearly 4 additional years to hit your retirement goal. So that's why it's critical to do that portfolio checkup, making sure that your allocation is appropriate and in line with your goals. Now, on the other end of the spectrum are those investors who jump out of the market due to volatility. And we've all just certainly gone through a period of volatility. And so this might make you think of that time right now. But let's look at the same blended portfolio of stocks and bonds from the last slide. And let's look at a similar scenario where you're 3 years from retirement and $100,000 away from your goal. And in this example, we're using the end of 2007 and the global financial crisis. So by February 2009, as your portfolio drops, you may be tempted to just say, the market volatility is too much. I just want to get out. I don't want to be invested at this time. Doing so, you convert your portfolio into a more conservative investment like Treasury bills, which offer a fixed rate of return and guaranteed interest payments and principal value at maturity. While conservative investments are generally less risky than other asset classes, they typically generate lower returns over time. Now, in fact, if you stayed invested in Treasury bills until your retirement target date, you would certainly have fallen well short of your $1 million goal. On the other hand, by staying invested in the blended portfolio, you would have hit your retirement goal on time. Now, as you can imagine, one of the challenges by jumping out of the market is that you also have to know when to get back in. Otherwise, you might never reach your goal. So keep in mind, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your portfolio is appropriate, as I mentioned, and making sure that you are not age aggressive or too conservative based on your time horizon and your risk tolerance. And one last tip while you're doing a portfolio checkup, it's critical to confirm the beneficiary information on all of your retirement accounts. If those accounts were established long ago, they may need to be updated. You may have been married, so you have a spouse that you want to add. You may have younger children or stepchildren that you need to add as beneficiaries on your account. If you set up a trust, you may want to name the trust as a beneficiary in your retirement account. We can't stress how critical this is to keep that beneficiary information up to date. In most cases, the beneficiaries listed on your accounts do override the beneficiaries listed in your will or trust, even if that is newer. So you just want to make sure if you have a life event and you have not taken the time to update that beneficiary information, please make sure you do that. Now, when we think about Social Security, which certainly may be a primary source of income for retirees, you want to make sure you have a strategy in place for dealing with Social Security. Now, one of the myths that seems to be persistent and things that we hear about Social Security is that it might not be there when you retire. And let's take a look at why that's not very likely. Since the early 1980s, total Social Security revenues have been greater than the benefits paid out. So a surplus has built up over the years and totaled nearly $2.9 trillion at the end of 2018. However, starting in 2020, it is projected that Social Security will begin running at a deficit as total revenues are estimated to be less than benefits promised. Now, this trend is expected to accelerate in the 2020s as more baby boomers start to retire. To make up for future deficits, Social Security will start drawing from the trust or the surplus to pay out those full benefits promised. But the current estimates actually predict the surplus will last only until about 2035, which you might hear as the end of, quote unquote, the end of Social Security. But this doesn't mean that the Social Security system is bankrupt. Even with the surplus depleted, Social Security will still continue to collect payroll taxes from workers and employers. Actually, the latest estimate shows these tax collections will allow Social Security to continue paying about 80% of benefits promised. Of course, a 20% cut in benefits might be hard to swallow for many, but it doesn't mean that Social Security will completely go away. And again, there are many possible solutions to fix Social Security. One option is to make up that gap is to increase payroll taxes by an estimated 2.78%, and that number is split between employees and employers. So certainly this is a hot topic. We may not see any action taken from the government until it's in a crisis form, but these are options that can keep Social Security well funded well into the future. So just when we're thinking about Social Security, it's important to understand some of the basics of how Social Security works so you can maximize the program based on your personal situation. One of the first things you need to know is your full retirement age, or FRA, and some of us already have thought about this, have that number ingrained in our mind, but this is the age you're eligible for full retirement benefits from Social Security. It is actually determined by the year in which you were born. So regardless of your full retirement age or FRA, the earliest age you can start collecting normal Social Security benefits is age 62. You can file for benefits anytime between age 62 and age 70. But the question in mind is, what's the advantage to waiting longer to receive Social Security? And really, the longer you delay, the more you'll get. So let's look at an example of how that works. In 2020, these are the maximum amounts a person could receive in benefits from age 62, beginning at age 62 to age 70. And to qualify for these amounts, you would have needed a very high income for a very long time. So you're hitting that payroll tax cap for 35 years. As you can see, delaying the start of benefits would increase the amount of monthly income that you generate. While it would be nice, obviously, to qualify for maximum benefits, the reality is that very few people do. For someone with a history of making an average income in the United States, these are the monthly Social Security benefits one could expect in the year 2020. Now, again, you'll notice that the older you are when you start taking it, the higher the benefit amount. So delaying is one way to increase your retirement income, but you also might be thinking it could be tough to just live on Social Security. And the more you earn at work, the less Social Security is going to replace. So as you can see, if you make $50,000 per year, Social Security is designed to replace about 45% of your pre-retirement income. If you move further out, as your earnings continue to increase, Social Security will only replace about 27% of your pre-retirement income at an earnings rate of $150,000. So again, as we said, while Social Security isn't likely to disappear, you might want to estimate how much income it's going to generate, which will help you develop a strategy for when you start receiving those benefits. Now, to pay for your living expenses in retirement, you'll likely need a combination of income from Social Security and your other income sources that you've been building up. Since there's no such thing as what we call a retirement paycheck, let's look at how you're going to be able to convert your retirement savings into income that will help you create your retirement paycheck. So one basic strategy is to take your retirement savings and invest it into something that generates interest payments. One example is to invest in money market accounts or CDs, but these assets, as you can see, don't offer much in return. A $500,000 investment in a money market savings account would only generate about $100 per month. 1 year CDs are only slightly better by generating about $225 per month. So neither of these investments historically generated enough for most people to live on. There are other income generating investments that have offered higher yields. These investments will come with additional risks, but have also historically provided significantly more income to replace someone's monthly income in retirement. Another strategy for creating a stream of retirement income is to take out systematic withdrawals. A systematic withdrawal sells a small portion of your overall retirement portfolio at regular intervals to help you generate income. So again, let's imagine you had a $500,000 investment in your retirement account and purchased $100,000 shares of an investment at $5 per share. Now let's look at what might happen if you plan to take a $1,500 per month systematic withdrawal. As you can see, in good months, when your portfolio is up in value, you'll sell fewer shares to generate your monthly income. However, in months when your retirement portfolio goes down in value, you'll need to sell more shares. Each of these strategies we discussed for producing income in retirement obviously is going to have its pros and cons. Using a portfolio of income-producing investments may help keep your nest egg intact by only distributing income rather than your original retirement savings. However, many income-producing investments vary in the amount that they produce on a monthly basis. Creating a systematic withdrawal plan can help ensure you'll get consistent income on a monthly basis. But this type of plan also runs the risk of eating into your original investment, especially when the market drops. And again, all investments involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. So as we wind down, and I think we are staying on target with our timeline, the last thing you need to do before you retire is look beyond the money. And let me explain what that means. When it comes to retiring, obviously money is important. It provides opportunity, but we'd like to think it isn't everything. If you're between the ages of 45 to 55 years old and feeling a bit down, you're not alone. This is actually when people report feeling the most unhappy in life. Between the stresses of work, kids, aging parents, health, and many other factors, they tend to weigh heavily most on this age group. It's probably not a coincidence, if you'll think about the term midlife crisis, is also associated within this age range. So the good news is that for many people, it's going to get better. Study after study has shown that on average, as people get older, they tend to become happier. And this trend has been really observed across genders, all genders, income levels, education, culture, and geography. As you can see, this U curve of happiness has been attributed to lower stress levels, less regret, less concern for status, and having lots of experience with your emotions. As people age, they tend to really savor the familiar, peaceful, ordinary events that make up their daily lives and reflect who they are in the present. And that is a really powerful statement if you think about that. Certainly having money makes retirement easier, but as the saying goes, it does not buy happiness. So some of the factors that contribute to happiness in retirement, certainly going to be good health, friendships and family. You want to make sure you have strong friendships and good relationships. These are certainly been known to boost both your mental and your physical health. Unfortunately, individuals who are isolated or not very healthy don't always feel as happy as they could be in retirement. So those are one of the things, or several of the things you need to keep in mind when you're thinking about retirement. Think about those factors that are going to keep you happy. In addition to that, one of the things that we've spoken about, and you may have heard this before, is really having a sense of purpose. If you think about the island of Okinawa in Japan, they're known for having one of the longest life expectancy rates in the world. So obviously there are many factors that contribute to that, but one of the reasons may be this concept that you see here on the screen, ikigai. And that is a word that really just translates into your reason for being, or the reason you get out of bed each morning. And I think we all do have a sense of purpose on a daily basis. As you get closer to retirement, things change. So some of those reasons for you may change as you move into the future. But it's helpful to think about some of these questions as you're thinking about your purpose. What do you love? What does the world need? What can you get paid for? And what are you good at? These are some of the things that come into place when you're thinking about that purpose. And as you're planning for retirement, it really is a nice way to close the loop outside of all the other factors that we discussed. So when you think about a retirement plan, we like to think about it as a retirement living plan. Obviously, with people having longer life expectancies and better health, there's a lot of things that people can do during retirement. And so these are some of the things that people enjoy doing, whether they contribute to a cause, want to spend more time visiting family and friends, pursuing hobbies. As we said, traveling is a lot of times high up on the priority list, starting a business, or even going to school and pursuing a secondary education. A lot of times these are things that people think about when they're creating their retirement living plan. And these are just a few fun facts of accomplishments by some people you may be familiar with that had these accomplishments well past the age of 65. So again, there is certainly opportunities out there for us as we move into those retirement years. And this is a focus when you're thinking about your retirement living plan. So, as we wind down here, I think we'll kind of leave you with this quote. Retirement is wonderful if you have two essentials, much to live on and much to live for. And I think this is something that we have all heard before, but it really does make a difference if you have an opportunity to think about that, much to live on and much to live for. Thank you so much for joining today. Again, just as a wrap up, the 7 items that we discussed, um, thinking about the timing, your retirement target, how to maximize your nest egg. Make sure you do that portfolio checkup. Think about Social Security and building that retirement income stream. And then finally, looking beyond the money. As you know, our team at Goulden and McCarthy is available to you as a resource as a 401k participant. Our advisors also work closely with individuals. So if you're thinking about a retirement plan or you just want a second opinion on a plan you may have in place, I have our contact information here on the screen. Certainly use this as an opportunity to reach out as a sounding board for questions. We are available. We appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.